Welcome to PlanetGeo, the podcast where we talk about our amazing planet, how it works, and why it matters to you. Good afternoon, Chris.
How you doing, Jesse?
I'm doing well. How about yourself?
Doing well. It's a little hot and humid out today, but doing well. So let's get this thing started.
Let's start off. What are we doing here?
Well, you know, this is kind of funny how this whole thing came about. You just called me one day and said, "Hey, Chris, you listen to podcasts?" I said, "Well, yeah, I listen to a few. What do you think about doing a podcast?" I'm like, "Whoa, that's kind of how we got the ball rolling."
Don't put all this on me. Don't put all the weight on me. I don't want to take credit for a bad idea.
Look, here's what it comes down to, though. You and I are on the ridiculous side of loving the geosciences. We are excited about the geosciences, and we think the geosciences are maybe underestimated, underplayed, and we want to do what we can to change that.
That's exactly right.
Because we think that geoscience is important. You know, we were talking the other day, and to me, it comes down to there is no planet B. This is the one we've got. It's an amazing place. It's an amazing planet. It's gorgeous. It's beautiful. It's awesome.
That's right.
And we need to learn as much about this planet as we possibly can.
That's right. And so geology or geosciences in general, this is a relatively new field when you compare it to biology and chemistry and physics. These were all fields that sort of came of age in the early 1900s, late 1800s. Geosciences, really, we came to our understanding of plate tectonics, which we'll talk about later, only in 1960s. So it's kind of a relatively new field. And we both share the passion for it and the opinion that most people, if you're paying attention to the world around you, most people should know something about the Earth and how it works. This is going to be targeted at people who are just generally interested in things. You don't need any previous background knowledge to listen to and gain something from this podcast.
Correct. Yeah, I guess I'm a little bit more of a hard line on that Earth science, geology, geoscience is new relative to biology, chemistry, and physics, and it's always been my impression from an educational standpoint that we're struggling for legitimacy, and I don't get it because this is our place.
That's right.
And for everybody should know the way this planet works.
That's right. For an everyday person, geoscience or earth sciences is regarded as sort of the little cousin, the ugly stepchild, or whatever you may call it, to biology, to physics, to chemistry, to the things that grab the news. But it's very important to our everyday life, the economy, and just your experience as you walk around in the world. Chris, we both have a background in education, and we have a very kind of interesting relationship, and we're both practicing geoscientists, but kind of in very different aspects. So let's talk about that.
Right. We do have very different experiences and backgrounds. I am a high school geology, earth science, astronomy teacher. In fact, you were one of my students in high school.
That's right.
When I went...
Unfortunately,
yeah, good one. When I graduated from high school, I knew two things. I knew that I was not going to do anything in science, and I knew definitely I was not going to be a teacher. So I found myself in just a general education class, and it fit the schedule that I wanted. And so I ended up in a physical geology course taught by one of the most gifted people. And 3 days in to that class, I knew right there that geology was for me. I had no idea what direction I was going to go. I just knew this is it. It landed in my lap. I was immediately in love with it, and I took it for everything it was worth. So when I went through my undergrad degree, I majored in geology.
Okay, so you're an earth science teacher. I had you in class. You're not just any old earth science teacher, though. You are a nationally recognized earth science teacher. Earth Science Teacher of the Year award nationally in 2014, was that?
2013, yes.
I mean, you've done a load of different teaching, really diverse stuff, including a summer science field trip, which we'll talk about later. And you just started teaching an astronomy course. Is that right? This past year?
Correct.
So you've done this your whole career, opening up new classes and sort of start pushing the limits.
Most high schools in Michigan don't teach a dedicated earth science class. We do.
Yeah, and this goes back to our thing. It's ridiculous that earth science is not a required curriculum at the high school level for public school system, right? I mean, whereas biology and chemistry and many of these other science disciplines, which are clearly important for society, are, and we feel strongly that earth science should be in that category because
Correct.
it's important to everybody.
Recently, the geosciences have been thrust into, or the earth sciences have been thrust into the spotlight. You talk about things like climate change and the water issues that we face and the natural resource issues that we face. And so, the next gen high school standards reflect a lot of earth science content.
Well, that's I'm happy to hear that. That's great.
Yeah, it's good. Yeah. So tell us what you did. So you went to college.
Yeah.
And then what? Tell us about your background.
I went to a small liberal arts college in Michigan called Hope College, and we studied geology there. I knew from the outset. I grew up I'm a son of a high school biology teacher, so I was always interested in science. And then when I took your class in ninth grade, it was just like boom, blew the doors off. This is for sure what I was going to do. So I knew going into college that I wanted to study geology. Then I went to grad school. Started in a master's, went to the University of Alberta, ended up not getting a master's, but changed into a PhD. So I got my PhD there in 2015, went and worked in Washington, D.C. for a couple years as a researcher. And now I'm a professor at Penn State. So I'm a professor in the Geosciences department at Penn State, and I've been there for going on a year now. So new job, new title, new exciting stuff.
Right. You are a PhD in geology, and I told you that I would call you Dr. Rymink one time, and I've done that. So
come on. All right, come on. Show some respect. Come on, show some respect.
You don't deserve it. You don't deserve it. So we have very different backgrounds, but we do share a love for the geosciences. So Jesse,
that's right.
Tell us a little bit about how you define geoscience.
Yeah, so geoscience, I would consider myself a geologist, which is sort of has the connotation of looking at rocks and studying physical rocks. But geosciences and earth sciences are really interchangeable, and they cover everything about the earth. The atmosphere, oceans, studying rocks, how rocks interact with the oceans and atmosphere, minerals, groundwater, studying the crust, the mantle, the core, Earth's magnetic field. All this stuff is part of the earth sciences or the geosciences. And so, you've covered a broad swath of the really important processes that are really important for understanding how our Earth works. What about you?
No, that works. It's a broad category because, you have this interaction between, geology and biology and geology and chemistry. And
basically for the importance to society kind of perspective, if it's not grown in the ground, then we're extracting it from the earth in some way or another. And so we're mining it, we're pumping it out of the ground, we're using it as water, we're drawing water out of our lakes. That's all earth science, geoscience questions. So a huge amount of the materials that we consume as a society are intimately related to our understanding of the geosciences.
Yes. Yep. You're not going to get any argument from me. So
shocking,
all right,
right?
Jesse. It is.
Yeah, it's the one time.
We have experienced how people think geology is cool, but they don't quite know how it matters or why geology or earth sciences are important.
That's right.
You say anything about that?
Yeah, totally. I think we've talked about this over many late nights with a few beverages, talking about the earth sciences and how to people are genuinely interested. I think.
How many times have you had this happen where you say to somebody, they ask what you do, and you say, "I'm a geologist," and they look at you like you have a horn growing out of your head.
That's right.
Oh, that's awesome. What are you going to do with that?
That's right. People are like, well, what the hell do you do? You just look at rocks all day? And for me, I'm like, well,
that's what we do. Yes, we stare at rocks.
That's what I do a little bit, right? But I'm not the typical geoscientist out there in the world, right? So there's a whole big wide world that you kind of get to experience when you have this little bit of an understanding of how the planet operates and why it is the way it is, right? But you have a lot more experience with this. You've been teaching high school for what, like 85 years now, something like that?
Yeah. I've been teaching for 23 years. Nice.
Okay. All
That's good. Yeah,
Looks
appreciate that.
Yeah. But speak to this. Speak to what you have a whole new crop of freshmen in high school to seniors in high school in your class. with a little bit of attention focused on you in your classroom every week, every day, every new year. So can you speak to this a little bit?
Yeah. I don't think this is a hard sell. I think maybe I used to struggle with this a little bit more in terms of making this relevant. But over the course of my career, how can earth science not be relevant to everybody? It's not all about, volcanoes popping off and massive earthquakes and things like this, but we have real issues
that's
that
definitely
are going
part
on.
of it, right? That's definitely definitely volcanoes are a super cool aspect about earth scientists, and earthquakes.
Absolutely.
And they matter, but they're not the only thing that matters.
No,
So,
they aren't. They aren't. When you read the news, there's just a lot in the news that surrounds geoscience. I mean,
right.
it's our planet. How could it not be out there all the time? There's a lot going on.
And that's something we're absolutely gonna try and highlight as throughout this podcast.
Yeah, and to touch on something you said too is, in terms of why earth science matters is just, there are a lot of different levels to go at this, but one of the easiest ones is just the more we know about our planet, the more we can appreciate it. And so just like being connected to this planet, we have to know about it. Otherwise we don't have that connection.
That's right. And there's two aspects to that. Is first of all, just a general walking around appreciation, right? Something you can carry in your back pocket when you're walking around your daily life, and you can understand a little bit more. So it's another lens you can put on. You can put on I understand a little bit about the earth science. I understand a little bit about diamonds or oil or, glaciers or their landforms or lakes or whatever it may be. And you understand a little bit more. So when you walk around the world, you see those things, you can, appreciate that experience. You can experience that in a different way, right? And the other thing is that it matters to our society, that there are key issues that are, we're running short of some mineral resources. There's strategic metals out there we're running short of. We need to be focused on finding these things. As a society that consumes a lot of stuff, we need to find more of this stuff. We need to mine these things. We need to do it in an efficient and environmentally sustainable way, but we need to pull them out of the ground. That's just the way it is.
Right. So that is kind of what this is all about, right?
That's right.
That's what we're doing.
So we're going to be talking about a lot of various aspects of the geosciences, from interesting aspects about national parks, places we've been, newsworthy topics, a lot of different stuff. But I think one of the things we're going to really try and convey is our passion for the earth sciences and why it's a really it's a beautiful science in some way. And I remember this one story. I was sitting in I think it was my junior year. I took your class. Was it your geology class that we did a field trip, right? Up to the Upper Peninsula of Michigan?
Yes.
Yeah. So it's like a long weekend or something like that, right? We're camping.
I dropped the transmission out of my car.
That's right.
In Ewan, Michigan. Okay.
That's right.
There's a whole nother story with that, but I bought a new truck on that trip.
Yeah, that's right. I forgot about that.
So, hey, taking kids up into the UP and out west, it's not been a cheap endeavor.
No, it's not easy, and it's not cheap, right? Yeah, I remember we had several fiascos on that trip. But the one thing I do remember that's relevant here is we're on this field trip, and basically we're sitting out on these outcrops. We're looking at these metamorphosed basalts. So these are volcanic eruptions. These are rocks that were erupted on the surface of the earth back during a period of time when our continent almost split apart. Basically, it was called a failed rift event. So these are really old rocks. They're pretty complicated. They've been metamorphosed, meaning they've been heated up to high pressures and temperatures. And do you remember the location I'm talking about? It's like behind the Lowe's, or there's
I think it's Wetmore Landing.
That's it.
On Lake Superior.
Exactly. Yeah. On Lake Superior. I mean, I could picture this outcrop. I haven't been there in however many years. We're sitting there, and the exercise is, all right, there's all these little veins going across this rock, right? And there's like deformation in it. And so basically your exercise you put together was figure out what happened, how many events are there, and when did they happen, right? And just by sitting there for a couple hours, observing the rocks, and you can come to an understanding. There's great beauty in that. And as a science, the earth sciences are inherently observational. Earth is so big, the timescales are so long that we can't model them. We can't replicate them in a lab that well, for the most part. We can't make a lab experiment that is plate tectonics. So it's inherently observational. It's a little bit artistic, and you just use these very simple logical steps that anybody can follow along with. It's really a beautiful thing. And so that hooked me.
That trip was the first time I ever saw your personality, by the way.
I hit it. I played it pretty tight to the chest in high school, didn't I? Yeah.
You were a piece of work. I'll tell you that right now.
Too many details
I had to check your pulse to make sure you're still with me more than once.
Let's not get too personal on it here, but no, yeah, I played it pretty close to the chest. I remember sitting back there, I think I had my arms crossed, sitting in the back of class, scowling at you for most of the class.
Yes. Yeah, I thought you hated it. I did. And then I took you up there, and it was, whoa. Really got to know you on a different level on that trip. And then, of course, that summer is when we went out west on summer science.
Whole nother experience.
You know, I just remember you really didn't ever leave my hip pocket during that trip. We hiked together. I remember walking down from Amphitheater Lake. It's about a 6-mile hike down in the Tetons.
Grand Teton National Park.
Correct. And you just were asking questions because we had to leave the top because the storm was blowing in and so on. So we're on our way down, and you're just asking me questions about things that we had seen. We'd seen everything. We'd seen enough to be able to work through the general geologic story of the Tetons.
Which is a fascinating, fascinating thing. Grand Tetons are spectacular.
They are. I'm stuck in a rut. It's a good rut to be stuck in, but every summer I've been going back to the Tetons to go climbing and backpacking for 3 weeks and with my family. It's not a bad life.
Bad life at all.
Yeah. But I remember you were just asking questions, and I didn't give you any answers. I would either confirm or ask a different question, different way. And then you would think about that for 5-10 minutes. We'd just walk in silence, and you come back with another question. By the time we got down to the parking lot and the trailhead, you worked through the entire generalized geologic story of Grand Tetons just off your own observations, and it was a cool thing.
Well, that it shows I'm a little bit of a nerd, and also that geology is a relatively simple thing. It's we can work through basic observations, understanding the Earth at the scale that is important. It's you don't need too much fancy stuff to be able to do that.
Yeah, one of the hard things about it though, and this was one of the difficult things about me in geology is I'm able to, you get these really cool and fancy diagrams that you can get online or get out of a book or things like this about the models of how geology works and how this planet works, right? But then when you see it on scale, it's tough. That's the hard part about geology is taking the extremely large and extremely slow and putting it down on a sheet of paper.
Okay. You've been doing all these trips for a long time, nationally recognized earth science teacher. There's a reason that you are that. And you've been teaching for a long time. You've produced a lot of earth scientists, meaning students who've been in your class, taken your geology class, have gone on to earth science degrees, a surprising amount for a place like Southwest Michigan where there's not a lot of industry that people can go into.
Right. I'm not a PhD, so I don't bring that.
So you're not overqualified for anything. Is that what you mean?
Okay. I didn't say that. You did.
No offense to all my friends with PhDs.
Yeah, right. But yeah, I'm not a PhD, and so I don't have that. You come with this. You're a research scientist. I've never done that. I try to do geology where geology is best, and geology is best not in a classroom. Geology is best outside. That's right. Out in nature where we can sit and see the stuff we're talking about.
That's right. I mean, understanding the Earth is, it's best done out in the world a little bit. Now we can do it in various avenues, and we hope that this podcast will be one of them.
Right. It's to me, being a geologist is with the best excuse in the world to go travel, to go see these things, because I read about them. I see, examples of different things, and then you do a little digging on it, and you're like, where is that? I have to go see that.
Yeah.
And I remember the first, these first things that I've seen, where I saw my first anticline. I'm like, whoa, that's an anticline. That's really cool. Holy cow.
We'll get to what an anticline is later on.
I've had that experience time and time again, because when I come across these things, I have to go. I put it on my list, and my family goes with me.
I think there's a funny story about that. Once upon a time in high school, when you were being a little bit of a wuss about going somewhere. You needed a little push.
I remember that you were a senior doing an independent study project for me, And this was back in 2004, in the fall of 2004.
That's right.
Mount St. Helens had a couple month period where Mount St. Helens started to show some life again, had some small explosions and
Mount
so on.
St. Helens is a massive volcano that erupted in the 80s, in the 1980.
Yeah. Anyway, I've always talked about it. I'm in love with St. Helens. You came in. And I was in the middle of teaching class. I was teaching my geology class, and you're a giant. You're like 6'5", and so you just walked up right behind me and interrupted me and say, "Are you going to Mount St. Helens?" Because that's kind of the way you talk.
Oh, come on now.
So, and I looked back at you. I looked over my shoulder and up, and I'm like, "No." And I'm right in the middle of teaching right now. What do you want? And you said, I knew you were all talk.
Well, that's because you
just walked away.
I mean, you
walked away.
Okay, but in every class, I'd taken 2 classes from you, plus the summer science field trip at that point. And every time, you get out there in Yellowstone and you're just banging on about how amazing it would be to die in a volcanic eruption. And, when I die, I'm gonna be turned around. You're gonna see the impact from the volcanic eruption on my face, so that everybody knows that I turned around to look at it. Oh, you thought you were such a badass about all this stuff. And then here you are, not going out to Mount St. Helens when it might erupt. I mean, come on.
Yeah. So that bothered me. And so that night, I had a night class at Grand Valley in downtown Grand Rapids. And so I went to class. We were in the computer lab. And before I knew what happened, I bought a ticket to leave on a Thursday night and come back on a Monday night. I was going to miss 2 full days of school.
During a school week.
So yeah, and I have young kids at the time, and so I hadn't checked with anybody. I had to go home and talk to my wife then, and I walk in the door, she's sitting there watching TV, and I turned the TV off, and I sat down next to her, and I'm like, hey, I got to talk to you about something. And she looks at me, and she's like, what's going on?
Please have permission to fly across the country to maybe look at a volcano that might erupt.
Yeah, unbelievable. So
we love Jenny though. Your long-suffering wife.
We love Jenny. Yeah, we do. But so anyway, and I said, hey, and I just broke it to her. Like I went and bought a ticket to go see Mount St. Helens. She's like, where's your hotel? I said, hotel. I'm not leaving the mountain. We rented a car. I'm sleeping in the car.
I'm going to die. I'm going to die with the volcanic eruption hitting me in the face.
Yeah, so that's what we did. It was a cool experience. So I went to see St. Helens.
Did not erupt, but
it did not erupt. I do have some really cool pictures though of steam plumes coming up out of it.
I remember you brought those back, and I mean you were proud as
I was so proud.
You were proud as a peacock when you came back. You were strutting around for months, just so happy. Yeah. But I mean, in all honesty, those are super cool photos, and it's a beautiful thing to see a mountain kind of rumbling that volcano rumbling that it might erupt. It's amazing. Anyway, all right. Well, the main point is, all right. You're a little bit gung ho. I was sitting in your class about, I don't know 15 years ago, something like that. And we've done a lot of camping, rock collecting, sitting around talking about life since that time. And we have this shared interest, shared passion in the geosciences with very different experiences. Like you said, I mean, you are an unbelievably good teacher. You can distill down these really complicated things so that anybody can understand them. It's a work of art watching you teach a classroom. I'm a research geologist. I've been researching for a long time, doing some potentially pretty esoteric research, but I'm now in a position where I'm teaching undergraduates, and Penn State Geology or Geosciences department is a really excellent department, and I'm very happy and honored to be a part of that. So we're going to put together these podcasts. We're going to cover a lot of stuff.
Right. So we're going to begin, Jesse, with our next episode on plate tectonics.
That's
correct?
Right. That's right. Yeah.
Yeah. We think that's a really good place to start because it's the foundation for a lot of things that we're going to want to talk about as we move through.
That's it for this week. Thanks for joining us, and stay tuned for our next episode coming up in 2 weeks. We are really excited about this project, and as part of it, we are looking for your feedback and input. So please leave us any questions, topic ideas, and comments. On all the social medias, we are at PlanetGeocast, and our email is planetgeocast@gmail.com. We would love it if you liked and subscribed to this podcast, and we'll chat with you soon.